This video is going to be speaking about certain arguments that Muslims love using. I want to talk about rabbinic arguments that they use. Now, first of all, they often like to use, well, the Old Testament does not teach a second coming. Yet, Muslims themselves believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ. They also like to use the argument regarding Isaiah 53. They like to say, well, Jews don't regard it as about Jesus. And Muslims love using the same argument. I've even noticed some Muslims who love saying, well, the Old Testament is not the Tanakh. Read the Tanakh, it's Israel, not Jesus. Now, here's a problem with most of these arguments. And also, I've also mentioned the curse of Jeconiah that was used by Muslims, which I mentioned in a video that I did in responding to Shadid Lewis, who used the argument of the curse of Jeconiah. My question to the Muslims is this: why do you demand Christians to prove the second coming of Jesus in the Old Testament, yet you yourselves believe in the second coming of Christ and don't even believe in the Old Testament? Why is it that you force Christians Why do you force Christians to prove something to you regarding the second coming of Christ? Why is it that you also use rabbinic arguments such as Isaiah 53, and you borrow those same rabbinic arguments from Jews, Orthodox Jews? And why is it that you say, oh, well, the Old Testament's not the Tanakh. Read the Tanakh, it's Israel. When, point of fact, there are Jews who have come to faith in Jesus Christ as a result of reading the Tanakh. And that has happened. Not reading some Christian translation, but reading the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. Some Jews have come to faith in Jesus as a result. I also want to touch upon briefly the subject of the curse of Jeconiah, which Shadid Lewis mentioned. Is Shadid or any other Muslim aware that if you guys use the curse of Jeconiah to attack the validity of Christianity, do you realize that you debunk Islam? Because the whole point of the Jeconiah's curse is to deny Jesus being the Messiah. That's the purpose for the whole argument of Jeconiah's curse, that Jesus can't be the Messiah because of curse of Jehoiakim. This would debunk Islam because you Muslims believe in Jesus as the Messiah. In fact, the criteria of being the Messiah, according to both Jews and Christians, is that he has to be a descendant of David. That's the criteria of being the Messiah, one of the criteria of being the Messiah, according to Jews and Christians. So why, Muslims, are you using Jeconiah's curse as a means of condemning Christians? I'm not saying you Muslims all are doing this, but some of the Muslims, including Shadid Lewis, have actually used Jeconiah's curse in an argument to attack Christianity. I find it astonishing that Muslims are willing to use counter-missionary arguments from guys like Tovia Singer or whoever, when the same criteria used to condemn Jesus as a false Messiah can be used to falsify Islam and Muhammad. Why are Muslims using rabbinic arguments to attack Christianity and Christian belief, when some of those same arguments can be turned against your beliefs about Jesus? It's funny that Muslims would appeal to rabbinic arguments to attack Christianity, yet they'll go to the Talmud and say, see, look what the Talmud says about Jesus, and we honor Jesus, unlike those Jews. It's absolutely ridiculous, to be quite honest with you. Now, even though I have used the Talmud in some of my videos, and appealed to the Talmud in some of my videos, I don't treat the Talmud as my authority. As far as I'm concerned, as a Christian, the Talmud has no weight or authority to carry on me as a Christian. But I do use it to illustrate a point. Like, for example, when I mention the death of the righteous making atonement, I simply make the point that the Talmud recognizes that as a valid principle. And that the New Testament has Jesus dying as the vicarious atonement of, of the world. I'm not saying the Talmud is an authority. To me as a Christian, it's not. I'm just saying that there are interesting things that you can find in the Talmud. Anyway, this is something I asked the Lord to allow me to do, and He allowed me to do this video. So, thanks for watching.